Thanks for dropping by. In this video, I'm going to answer a question that was posted on Facebook, and this is to do with the StyleText box size. I'm going to show you a couple of ways. I'm going to show you how to deal with it within Davinci Resolve, and then I'm going to show you, I think, an easier way by just adding some lines of code into the dot setting file, which may sound scary, but if you've got a very big, complicated composition inside Fusion, and you save it out as a macro or a group, it just seems to take a lot of time. There's no way of just moving one control to exactly where you want inside Davinci Resolve. But if you go into the code, you can move any control anywhere with just copy and paste. It's really easy. So I'm going to show you the two ways. I'm going to start off inside Davinci Resolve. I've just put together a really simple text. I don't want to go into a really big complicated composition because it's not necessary to show you what we're going to do. Be aware that if you have a big composition with lots of text in, it's far easier to do in the code. So we'll jump straight in. What am I talking about? Well, this text box up in the inspector is 8 lines long, and if we've just got a title or we've got something on the screen that's one line, this is wasting a lot of space inside the inspector. So we're going to change this box. But before we do, while I've got my mouse hovered over the box, if you look in the bottom left hand corner of the screen, you'll see it says text1.StyleText, and that is what this control is. If I come down to size, there we go, text1.size. So what we're looking for, we want to change styled text. So if we're just looking for text, we're not going to find it. All we're going to do is we're going to make this one line. Come down to the node, right click and go edit controls. We've got 3 columns, the third one's blank at the moment. At the top left we've got new control, and underneath it says ID. If we just click on there, this is every single control that is inside the inspector. What we need to do is to scroll down until we find styled text. There it is, that's styled text, so we select that. And now we've got the StyleText controls, and we've got a third column as well. I'm going to work down in the columns. From here, we're changing StyleText control. It is a text, not a problem. But here's the problem. It is in a user page currently, and we don't want it in the user page. We want it in the text page. Your pages are just here at the top of the inspector. So we've got text, layout, transform, shading, image, and settings. And if we select user, it would add another one called user. So we do want to put this in text. It does cause us a little issue further down the line, which we'll see shortly. But for now, we're just going to put it in text. We're going to leave everything else as it is. And then lines, we're just going to change that to 1. Now when I press OK, you're going to see the inspector change slightly, because every time you change a parameter or change a control or add a control, it goes to the bottom of the inspector. So you would probably just have to work with it as is, or you could create its own page. We could go back in and we could make that a user page, but again, it just makes more work. So that's how to change this text box size from within inside Davinci Resolve. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make this into a little macro. I'm going to make it into a 1 node macro. I'm going to call it title, and then going to select, so this is the node, the text 1, and I'm inside the macro editor, and here where it says text, I'm going to pick font, style, color, and I'm just going to pick the color size, and I'm going to leave it at size because I don't want too many controls for what I'm going to show you, because it's a bit mind numbing. You'll notice StyleText isn't here because these are in the order that they are in the inspector. So StyleText is at the bottom of the inspector, so I need to scroll down, and there it is. So we need to make sure we tick that to have it in the macro. I'm going to leave everything else because this is just demonstration purposes. I'm going to come to File and Save as Group, and we're just going to go and pop it in the template, edit titles, pop it in there. It's now installed in Resolve. It's just appeared. There we go. I'll close this. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to bring a new macro in. Because it's a group, it looks like a group here. You could ungroup it or double click and it opens, but you'll notice we've got a bit of an issue now in the inspector, and this is why I like the code bit better. But here now we've got this page which is text because everything else has moved to controls. So the StyleText box is all on its lonesome inside the inspector. We can move this and we can move it quite easily, but if we do move it, the text page is going to remain and this is going to be blank. So it looks a bit odd. And again, if you did it in the code, you don't get this. The way to move this is all you do is come back to the group, right click, edit controls, and when we go to ID drop down, oops, no style text, they're just inputs. So rather than guess, all we need to do again is we come to the text page and we hover over the StyleText box. And now when we look in the bottom left hand corner, this says title dot input 8. The title is the name of the node and we're working with input 8 now rather than StyleText. And the reason for that is because it's now a macro. So we want to move that. Let's come down to the title group here. It's just a one node group. We come to edit controls and we wanted input 8. So we take input 8 and you can see text and it's in the text page, so we can move it to the controls page. Click OK and it's gone from here, but this is now blank. Can't get rid of the text up here. And we go to controls and it's at the bottom, not where people tend to expect it. To move this to the top, what we actually have to do is bring everything above it below it. And the way to do that, just come back down to titles, and this is where I'm going to fast forward the video. I'm going to do 2 of them, which is going to move the font below, and then I'll move the rest and speed up the video in post. So we go edit controls, input 1, make sure it's in the controls page, otherwise we're starting again, and click OK. Nothing's happened because font and bold are connected. So when we do the next one, we do input 2 in control page, click OK. They now drop below, and it's because these two are connected. There we go. They're now in order. We've got our StyleText box at the top and all the controls underneath. And you could see by the way I did this, if you've got lots of controls, if we actually just brought in a text node, if we've got all these controls, to move the text box from the bottom and then put everything underneath it would take a long time. And this is why I prefer the code, because it's just a quick copy and paste and then it's done. I'm going to make a macro with this as 8 lines and then I'm going to save it out. There's a couple of differences to this. If we've gone into a node and we've gone edit controls and actually changed a control, so if we go into this 8 and we change this control here, it adds a little bit more code than if we left it at 8. So I created that macro and here it is, code box size. And it's, all that is a text but saved as a macro. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump into the code and I'm going to show you how we do it. What I'm going to do is, because I'm in the Fusion page, I can go over where it says code box size. I can right click and show folder. The reason it's got these icons on is because it's set to open in Visual Studio Code, which has just had an update, and it's got a new restrictive mode, which just seems weird. What we're looking at here is that one node, code box size. It's a group operator, which means we can see it as a group. And then inputs here is everything we see in the inspector. So all these inputs here, input 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, are what we see in the inspector. And from the earlier part of the video, this is where that input 8, etc. came from. Why it said input 8 is because it's just reading this code, not the default code. So that's the inputs, and then the output. This is always the last node that then connects to the media out and goes back to the timeline on either the edit or the cut page. So whichever your node is the last in your node tree will always be the output. And then everything under this output here and tools is the nodes. So this is a node. It's just made up of Lua script telling Davinci Resolve what to do. Now, if you've got 20, 30 nodes, this is going to be very, very long. And this is why to move all the controls up is quite difficult. Moving controls inside the code is really, really easy. Let's just jump back to here. And if you look in here, we've got, it's just a normal text node that we've saved as a macro. But if you look at the order of everything else and you think, right, I want size at the top. Size is really important for this macro. To do it inside Davinci Resolve, you'd have to think, right, I need to move this down to the bottom, then these, and then these, so everything's below size. But in the code, all we do is everything in inputs is inside the inspector. You come down to size, you would highlight it, and I'm going to do Control and X to cut it. You come up to the top one and you paste it just above the top one. The fact the input is in the wrong order doesn't matter, it just has to be unique. I'm then going to save it. I'm going to go back to Resolve, and what I have to do, I have to bring in another one. So this is the original, and if I bring in another one, size is now at the top, and that was a simple copy and paste, or cut and paste, because if you do copy and paste you'll get two of them. So it's far, I find it far easier to move things around and play with things in the code. It can be done within Davinci Resolve, but it's so long-winded, it takes hours. In the code, a couple of seconds. Maybe not a couple of seconds, but you know what I mean. I'm going to put that back. I'm just going to do a Control and Z and pop it back. So that's what's in the inspector. To add the code in to change the size of that box, it needs to go here, View Info. If you've added a label or you've changed anything, if you've gone into Edit Controls, under here it will say User Controls. I'm going to put the code in the description, but I'm also doing a video on snippets. It might be two-part video on Visual Studio Code snippets, which will include snippets to do this. So you could just use a keyboard shortcut and that's it, it's done, rather than typing out or copy and pasting that code. But I will put it in the description, so before I've done the video on the snippets, you can use it. I'm going to copy and paste it. We've got user controls now. Now user controls appears when you change something in the edit control or edit controls page. So that page that we have, I'll put it just on the right hand side of the screen. So this page that we've got with the 3 columns in, if you make any adjustments or you add controls or you tweak controls in that panel, you will then get this user control section, and underneath will be what you've done in the edit control panel. So this is basically the edit control panel. So user controls, there can be lots of things in here between these blue brackets here. This is where all the information would go. And this is StyleText Box Modifier code. This is a comment, and then this is a comment to say it's ended. So you know if you're changing things in here, you're affecting that box, the StyleText box of this node, because you may have more than one StyleText box. And the line we're looking for is there, it's text lines 1. If we change that, we can change how many lines just in the code. So if you've got 1 and then you think, oh, and actually it should be 2, you can just come in here and change this to 2. All these are set up because I want it in the control page controls. What the data is, it's everything that we did and saw inside the edit control panel. This is just a copy of the information. Width is fun as well because you can change the width of the box. So if you was entering numbers only, for example, you can make the box smaller. So I've added that. I'm going to save that out. We'll come back to this in a second, but I'm just going to save that out, jump into Resolve, and I'm going to bring in this code box again. You have to bring it in every time again when you change it because these are already here. And you'll notice now with this one inside the inspector, this is just 1 line. If we wanted to make this 2 lines, so let's jump in here. We just come to text lines and change that to 2, save it. And then again, we have to bring another one in. But this one has got 2 lines. And it's as simple as that. We can just change that line here, text lines. Everything around it, we can tweak this and play with this, but it's what was added using edit controls. The width, well, if we're just going to put numbers in, we could have this as, let's see, no, whoops, I don't want it as 10. 0.5. If you think of it as a percentage, so 0.5, 50%, halfway. If we come back in here and bring in another one, then you'll notice it's only half the size. And because it's longer, it's got a scroll on it. But if you was using numbers, you was just going to enter a number into here. So you might want it 1, and you could even have it a third. Come back in, drag another one in, and there we go. This could be just a number. And you can put these next to each other. So you could have, if you were just entering numbers, and this is what they do in a transform node. Bring that in. If you can see center, you've got center X, here's a box, center Y, here's a box. That's the same here. You can have them next to each other. Lots and lots of options to do it in here. You can change the placeholder, default text. You can change, it says enter name. So there it says enter name. If you wanted to change what that said, just type it in the code, jump back into Resolve, bring it back in, and there we go, we've changed the name of the box. So that's changing the code. You can have a lot less in here. I just popped into another macro which I'd already set up, and these are the basics for the minimum number of lines. So this is what I'll put in the description of the video, and this is enough to be able to change the number of lines that are in the text box, the style text box. So the link name's there, and this is the name of the page. We can change that page to, let's say we change it to text, and save that, and then go back into Resolve, bring another one in, and now we've got all those controls under text, but we've still got controls. Controls is a default page, and so settings. There is nothing I can see in the code where I can remove the control page. So you can make your own page, or you can have it, and again, bring it back in. Now no text page, we've just got the control page. So that's how you can manipulate things, move things around inside the inspector by just using the controls. As long as this is unique, it doesn't have to be in order to move things around. And this is the code for just dropping in. You need to use a control ordered down to this bit, needs to be there. User controls will appear when you've done something in the edit control. So if you haven't used the edit controls, you need to paste it in. So what we do to make the StyleText modifier, all that information would need to be in. So I'll put that in the description. I think I've covered pretty much everything else to do with this question, but I am about to do a video on snippets and Visual Studio Code, and the snippets, you don't have to write them. Once I've done them, I'll make them available for everybody. So if you're working in Visual Studio Code, which I've done a little setup video, and there'll be a card and a link in the description. Also in that description are links to other people's videos on how to use Visual Studio Code. So hopefully I've answered the question, and thank you very much for taking the time and watching this video. Please like and subscribe. It really helps and encourages me to do a little bit more. So for myself, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.